like always, there's this Mentimeter link in the chat box. So please click onto that and try and answer this. There will be only 2 questions today before we go on to data journalism and things related to data journalism. Many of you would have, we would have had discussions on data journalism before that as well. So what we expect from this session is what the question is. So can someone confirm whether that link works or it doesn't work?
So I'm trying to open it.
It's working, sir.
Yes, sir, it's working.
It's working.
In the meantime, sir, I must add one particular line that Professor Dr. Shankar Pandey actually does not require a formal introduction.
Thank you. That's very flattering. Yeah, because that's because all of us are from the same fraternity. So after teaching 20 years, if people from my own state don't know me, then it would be right. Anyway, but if you need, I have a website where I talk about myself. I'll provide that link. Right?
So the link is opening. We can access it. Yes, someone was trying to speak. I'm so sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah. So please, can you just, please go ahead. I can see some answers. So data, new concept and ideas, analysis, etc., etc. I get it. So please, so there are about 40 odd 50 people I can see on the screen. So some of them are organizers, but rest of you can just very quickly give me an idea, because there are so many dimensions of data journalism that we can talk about. And I assure you that I'll try and finish it by 9. So I won't keep you beyond 9 because our time is from 7 to 9. Professor Amit Shobhan Rai deserves more than 1 hour. So I can cut it short to 45 minutes. Now, we just had an offline session yesterday, and there were so many, faces where we could read, we could understand what is going on. Now I see a blank screen with not even, your face as an icon. There is an M, there is an A or whatever. So I can't see who is there.
If on this note, I can request some of you all to please turn on your camera.
Yeah.
Yes, talking to a blank screen becomes difficult. We all know that. We've been going through that online pandemic sort of a phase.
So some of you, thank you, Moitrey, so much. I mean, this is so kind of you. Thank you, Brajamohan Rao, right? I would prefer to see a few more faces, but anyway, you have your right to privacy also, I guess. Orghoda, so nice to see. With students, we know what they are trying to do, so I'm not trying to, students. Wonderful. So you want to know about data, you want to know about concepts, methods, fact checking. Okay, that is. Anyway, we can provide some overview on that. In 45 minutes, I would not. Statistics, that's one of my favorite topics, and I do things on statistics without tears, kind of a thing. So let us, we'll try and get some insights here. Data representation, but this is hardly 15 people who have responded. So what about the others? As I can see on the screen, only 15 have responded. So others are there?
Sir, may I interrupt you?
Yeah, you can, please.
Good evening, sir. Actually, the problem is the link is absolutely working, but when I tried to write something a little bit longer, it didn't work.
It is a word cloud, so please add one word.
Okay, got it. That's it actually. Later on, that's it. Thank you, sir.
I'm not going to give you, paragraphs to write. Otherwise, it would require more time. Abhishek is looking happier than yesterday. Probably he's happier when he's at home. So we can see on the screen, wonderful, about, still we haven't crossed. I was expecting more people. Thank you, Shomik. It's very kind of whoever is. Thank you, Ankita. Saddam, you're looking weightier on screen, than you do in person. So wonderful. Thank you, Shreyoshi.
Thank you, sir.
Shreyoshi is my classmate. We've done MA together way back in 96, 98. Okay, wonderful. So this was just like an idea, and as you know, I keep these records with me from all the sessions. So I keep on. Tanma Babu, thank you so much. So there's another question that I just want you to respond to. I'll just. I'll share another link with you, and I want you to respond to that. And here you don't even have to write anything, you just have to provide scales. So I'll just give you the link here, and you can just adjust that, and we'll just very quickly go back to that. So here comes the chat box, and here's the link. So here you either, there is strongly disagree on the left side of the screen, and there is strongly agree. So this is all, I mean, so here you don't even have to type in, all those words that you did. So I hope to get more responses here. And I guess the organizers are going to mark those people who don't respond as absent or something. So that might, just work against you if you do not respond. I know who's the fastest finger first, but I don't want to give names for, being fastest. But thank you, 11 people have responded. Can we have, more responses? 22 responses as of now. 23. So this is just, putting it on the scale, so it shouldn't take so much time. Can we have a little bit more responses, or only 23 people will be eligible for certificates, is it? 24 now. Yeah, we can, raising hands is not, an issue now, but let's have the answers first, and then we'll have the raised answers. If there's a question, please unmute yourself and ask. This is not a, this is not a class or something. We are all colleagues here, so all of you can, everyone is, allowed to just unmute yourself and ask or speak out, or even, present something over and above what I'm.
Please go ahead. Brojamohan, if we can hear from you.
I just got 28 responses out of 49 people I can see on the screen. Of course, I'm not responding, and so we need at least 40 responses.
My humble request to all the participants, please, if you can just respond to this link being shared.
Sir, good evening. I got logged out. Can you please share the link once again? I'm not getting the link.
Oh, yes. Oh yes, ma'am. Right, ma'am. Right. It's there. So the next response is from Manali, ma'am, but we want more responses. Yes, Lahori, please go ahead. You don't have to raise your hand, just ask.
Lahori, go ahead.
We can see your hands. Or is this hand just for show and you don't have a question? Okay, we have recorded that you are present, no problem. So we take this raised hand as a response that you are present. Anyway, so we have 32 anyway. So wonderful. So 4.1 out of 5. That's a good number. There are quite a few people who believe that data journalism should not be made compulsory. So if you have any, as we go along, if there is any reason why you think it should not be, please let me know. The second part is extremely interesting, and I'm so happy that, journalism teachers, majority of them, at least 60%, they consider themselves expert in Google Sheet and MS Excel, because if you know that, then you are good enough for data journalism, or most of it. In fact, I will share one video I did on how to use pivot tables, because if you know pivot tables, then a lot of data that we're going to show, and a lot of the data sets that we'll show is going to work. And the third is that there is no alternative for evidence-based reporting. So of course, majority of you believe that, and some of you think that okay, evidence-based reporting is not required. And I'm sure there are kinds of reporting where we do not require this kind of data-based evidence. So thank you for this input, and let me just go straight away, and we'll try and begin from where we left yesterday. We spoke of storytelling, and in fact begin with storytelling, and then try and evolve into, because statistics as such can be extremely just a second. So this can be very boring, at times. So we have to make sure that it's not as boring as generally people consider it to be. Let me just, where is that tab? Yeah. Is this visible? Is the
Yes.
slide visible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, it is.
So in response to one of those questions yesterday, I was just talking about how data journalism, has this epistemological claim. So yeah, that everything that we are suggesting is true, and we have to make our readers, our viewers, and everybody who's consuming news content agree to the fact that we are speaking the truth. And there are two ways of establishing the truth. One is through the narrative structure that we have evolved in journalism. When a reporter starts putting this story in this narrative structure, we are holding on to something which is very old, something which is very ancient, something which people have generally regarded as believable. And that's where this narrative journalism and all those parts come in, because yeah, let me just skip on to that. So stories, basically what they do is they are a representation of events, a reconstruction of reality. They have causal links. It's about reconstructing reality, and narrators or journalists in this case, they are kind of they are central to this process. And we also know that they let people co-experience. We spoke of empathy yesterday, and we spoke of things like mirror neurons and all, and we know that everybody else, when they are in a part of the story, they are kind of co-experiencing what we are suggesting. So when we use this narrative journalism with the tools of literary fiction, it will be literary, not literacy. And that's where, at times we have that kind of an argument with people in humanities, because their ideas of story is different from what our idea of story is. But what we basically do is we kind of adopt their techniques of this exquisite detail and internal monologue and the short story structure, so that when we put out our journalistic content in this form, people find them believable. And this is how narrative journalism has always been, and that is how journalism has been regarded as speaking the truth. Because we put out our content in this format, I'm sure we have not realized that too often, but when we put out our content in this format, this is something which is relatable, which is people can co-experience, and they regard it as believable most of the time. But the problem started coming in when people started misusing this format to kind of push through stories which were not true. And I have spoken about this particular incident in Washington Post in 1980, when a fake story by Janet Cook, if you just kind of Google Janet Cook and Pulitzer Prize, you'll get to know everything about it. So the story goes that she wrote a moving narrative piece about a 13-year-old heroin addict, Jimmy. And unfortunately for her, this particular story went on to win the Pulitzer Prize. And when any story wins a prize, there is renewed interest in that. People wanted to find out, where is Jimmy? And there was no Jimmy. So this was one place, award-winning story, not true. And that was one area where people realized, okay. And now we know that we can use the same structure to hoodwink people into believing things which do not exist. And that's where in the 1960s and all, this whole idea of precision journalism came in, where people wanted to, kind of, go over this precarious affair, because it might tempt journalists to alter the truth. And that's what we know what yellow journalism is all about, where we say that do not let truth come in the way of a good story. So that is why, these aesthetic considerations and all that, it became more important. And surely people realize that, okay, unless we treat journalism as a science, providing the evidence and, adopting the scientific method and the scientific objectivity and so on and so forth. And that's where this idea of precision journalism became so very important. And that's where, and these are the questions of precision journalism, and these are the same questions that we'll ask of data journalism as well. How to find information, how to evaluate and analyze it, how to communicate it in a way that will pierce the babble of information overload and reach the people who want, who need it and who want it, and how to determine and then obtain the amount of precision needed for a particular story. So this is what was the response to some of those question marks that we had over, misusing the narrative structure of storytelling to, in fact, make people believe things which actually did not exist. And that's where, we had that crisis of journalism, and people, started addressing that crisis by resorting to something which was more evidence-based, something that which people could verify for themselves, something that could be used as a bigger evidence than just somebody providing anecdotal evidence. Because, say, for example, what do we do in stories? The superintendent of police said this, or the commissioner of police said this, or the health commissioner said this, or whoever. So we are basically providing evidence in terms of anecdotes, and majority of the stories will have those anecdotes or those anecdotal evidence, as we know. But at times, and especially, and there are so many factors related to that. I mean, for paucity of time, I don't want to get into all those details, but one of them is that there is that official machinery which is out there to put out a particular narrative. So when we have people sitting in positions where they're accountable and putting out only a particular version of the story, it's very easy for people to fall for it, or regard that as the only truth. So that's where the role of a journalist comes in, because if we were just relating what people in positions were suggesting, because and I don't even need to tell you all people who are teachers over here that why do we need people who have some kind of a position, because they're accountable. So if a superintendent of police says something, I can put out his name, the SP says that, and it is an official information that he's putting out, and we know he or she, of course, is putting out, and he or she is accountable for that. And that's why, and as journalists, that's a very easy thing for us, because we are quoting official sources. I mean, all of us who worked in journalism, that is the question that our chief reporter would ask us, or we as chief reporters would ask our reporters: where is the quote? Where is the evidence? And if the quote is from an official person or an official source, that was regarded as something which is credible, and even our readers regard that as credible if there is an official version there available, or if there is an official anecdote available there. But we realize that that official anecdote might not be sufficient for a number of reasons, because they might only want to give the official version for reasons that we know. And that's where this question of questioning the anecdotal evidence comes in, and that's where these data sets or data sources, they become so very important. And in our data journalism classes, we have many ways of putting up for people that how to access data, because now it's about realizing that, okay, there is a story, there is an anecdotal evidence, or I have information about a certain story, and as I was discussing yesterday, that I come to the nut graph, where after that initial a personal anecdote or the initial information about the story, we need to provide evidence. So that has to be weaved inside the story, and we should know where to get that evidence. So any questions so far? Am I going too fast? Can I hear some human voices? No.
Any questions from anyone so far?
Are we all audible? I mean, or is it only me and Rashmi ma'am talking to each other? Is everyone there or no?
Yeah.
Hello.
We are there. We are here.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So let's here.
Sir, it's a humble request.
Ha.
একটু আস্তে বললেও ভালো হয়।
Acha. We are trying to imagine that that okay. So tell me, stop me when I want to. Anyone. So number one, I said that whenever there is audible and understandable also, because I know that I'm running very fast. So please let me know. Okay, thank you, Shomik, because that is very, very important. And I'm not just here to.
Hi, Uma. This is Devubali.
Bole.
I just wanted to tell you that could you go a little slower, because data and mathematics is not my subject. So could you?
I have not started data and economics. I'm just starting stories. I haven't started anything about data yet. I'm just trying to suggest the point I have made so far is this, that we need to provide evidence over and above the anecdotal evidence that some of these official spokespersons provide. Number one, we need these anecdotes. We need these attributions in stories. Yes or no? We need attributions in stories. We do, yes?
Yes.
Okay. And that is what traditional journalism has always been, of providing official versions. Why do we need official versions? Because they are verifiable. They are accountable. And that is what traditional journalistic stories are. I started off by suggesting that we use a particular narrative structure which helps us convince our audience that what we are saying is true. Right? So far, I mean, is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Uma, it's clear. Yes, Uma, it's clear.
Okay, thank you very much. So now we are suggesting that we have to provide credible evidence which people can verify for themselves, or we as journalists can verify the official versions, and we provide that evidence in our stories. And where do we get that evidence? Okay, now because of this digital infrastructure which is available, there are various questions about how much information is digital. I just got one on the internet. You might have your own views on that. That everyone will agree that the amount of digital information available on the planet now is something which is astounding. It is, humongous. Or I don't know anything bigger than humongous. It's as huge as possible. Almost everything is available in this 1 or 0 format. It is available in a binary format. It is available in a digital format. So for us, accessing information is not the issue. The issue is to find out the right information, or to find out the signal from the noise, that there is so much of information available. We just need to narrow it down to questions that are important for us. But now things have changed. Earlier, journalists had to scout for information because that information was limited to few people who had access to information. Now we have information in various forms available in the digital format. A lot of information, and so much of information that I will just share some data sets, and we will find out that we had no idea that such information existed. So the first task of data journalism is that, number one, we are using it as additional evidence inside our stories, apart from the anecdotal evidences. Anecdotal means somebody is saying something, but now we have an official version of public data or other kind of data which is available, and people can make sense of that. So we have to first of all access that information. Where do we access that information? Now, before you start asking this question, I must tell you that every data which is available on the internet is not suitable for journalistic use, right? Inscrutable silence. Yes or no? Please write down on the.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Wonderful. So there are certain characteristics of the data, and we have a thing known as data biography. I will share that kind of slide also very soon. But before that, we have to find out about where to access data. There are very many sources of accessing data. As a part of this particular project that we've been doing with Unicef for a number of years, I have compiled 60 data sets on the website, which I'm going to share with you. And there, we have provided links to a lot of those data sets. So I'm just sharing that particular data set with you and trying to tell you about, just give me a moment. So I'm just putting it on your chat box. You can just have a look at this data set and let me know whether it makes sense. Is this visible to you, the data set?
Yes, sir. In the website, it is visible.
Yes, it's visible.
Okay. So this is one way of accessing data, and we should have we should ask questions of data in exactly the same manner as we would ask questions of any news source. When anybody comes to us with a piece of information, we ask a lot of questions to that person, that whether that person is authorized to speak about that, whether what he's speaking is credible, whether he has some ulterior motive of kind of putting those questions out in the domain. So before we start using data sets, and this is information which is updated and it is available on the internet on various platforms. If you go through this data set, you will find out that there are things like open government data, which is, if you just click on, these are all clickable links that I've created. So if you click on this, you get access to data.government.link. So if I click onto this, I come to this particular slide, and I have a lot of data sets on various kind of things, including the judiciary and this and that and so on and so forth. We have information, and this is one of the most important data sets we are going to talk about. And I will also share the PDF of this National Family Health Survey data. So all of you can, in fact, try and open this link and see if it works. Is the NFHS data link working?
Yes.
No. Siddhartha, we'll have all these questions about journalists having credibility and all that. We will come to that. But let's with an open mind, just see what it is, and then we will have about the village, and the idea that people in remote villages are any less than us is open to questions. So we'll come to that. And I'm not saying data journalism in place of narrative journalism. It can be complementary as well. We are not supplanting something. Siddhartha, are you there? Siddhartha Chatterjee, are you there? No, you're not.
Yes, sir, I'm very much here.
Yeah. So it's not a question. It's not a question of getting anything in place of narrative journalism. It is about providing additional evidence and giving yourself additional information. For example, I mean, I did this exercise with journalists in Calcutta. I did this exercise with journalists in Purulia and in where else? We had one in Bolpur also, so and in Siliguri. So we did that exercise all over the state in 4 places. And after this, just using NFHS data, I will share this link on about how to use pivot tables to get that data. NFHS data is about 131 indicators from maternal mortality, infant mortality rate to everything about things that you can conceive of. So just see that. And we've had stories in the Hindu, the Times of India, the smaller newspapers, and we have all those WhatsApp groups, and people have realized that this is a very important source of information. So we can use data both as tool and as source. Am I clear about this? Data
Yes,
as
sir.
a source of information. We have no idea that there are questions related to this. I mean, I wish I could show you all these data sets. I can only give you the link here and ask you to go through it. But just through this NFHS data, people have done tens of stories. Our students can do tens of stories there. Just by when we talk, I mean, how to analyze. I'll come to that second part in a moment's time. But the first part is to find out where does data exist. And there is Google Dataset Explorer, there are government sites, there are ways of using this. But again, the question is, not every data is credible. Not every data is updated. Not every data can be used. So here I have a list of 60 data sets, and this is like, for example, Justice Hub. It is about open budgets, making sense of budgets. This is from 2019, but missing women and children. This is from the NCRB. NCRB again is a huge repository of data. I mean, if you know how to use that, I mean, again, this Poshan Tracker, then this India Human Development Survey, the tuberculosis cases, for example. When I was going, making all these things, I did not even know that medical certification of cause of death. And again, this National Achievement Survey. Just, I mean, every link here is a storehouse of potential news stories, and that is an idea that we need to push through. That we don't need to go to the block development officers always. In fact, we can have our own data ideas and then ask him about that information, or to look for people who are an example of this information that I got here. And that would make the story more interesting. So, for example, I mean, if we are doing on an unfortunate case of infant mortality rate, and we heard the Unicef chief talking yesterday about child marriage cases being the highest in our state. So we did not know that before we got this data. So based on that, we get to know that it is the highest. We find out where the district where it is highest, and we turn stories there, narrative stories. Data stories are not only about numbers. Numbers are a source and a tool, right? The data
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
is a source and a tool. And this is this massive repository of information that we have. And Pratham, sir, I mean, this is such wonder. I mean, just go through this. I mean, and we've had stories about, we've had stories about from which states, more students have been going abroad and all. And some of this is from Lok Sabha questions and answers. And this is a fabulous data on the socio-economic. So as you can understand, that a lot of research work went before I put up this list. So income tax returns data, petrol pump locator data, bureaucrats and vehicle registrations, and Indian states and Indian election statistics, and constituency-wise, and then crime, livestock census. I mean, this is about animals and their database. We have a mango database. You can just link and find out mango database. Air quality we all know about. Electricity consumption, coal mines, global protest tracker, ACLED data. In fact, I used ACLED data to do a small story on my website on journalists who've been attacked in India, for example. National highways, telecom subscription. So this is just an indicator. This is not a exhaustive list by any means, and I keep on adding to that. And thanks to friends from all over the country who tell me that how to update this. So I updated this maybe 2 months ago, and there are other things that I need to update here as well. So Bollywood movies database and cricket, of course. National Judicial Data Grid. So there are any number of data sets, authentic, credible, whose authors are known, and we know that okay, this is a source, and this source can be used for our stories. So the first part of data journalism is accessing data, and I just provided you a ready-made link of data which journalists have found useful. I'm sure our student journalists will also find useful, because just using that we can do small analysis and do stories from there. So let me go back to the presentation very quickly, because I know all of us are very close to dinner time, and I have no intention of violating your human rights on consecutive days. So I'll just very quickly go through the second and the third part of the presentation. And we will continue with these discussions again and again, later on. So this is what I was suggesting, that data journalism allows us to go beyond the anecdote. So why a certain development is taking place, and what can be done about that. So getting started is often, using through the list of questions that we need to answer. And this is a point that I have made more than once, that data can be used both as a source and as well as a tool. So that is again something that we keep repeating, because that is I've spoken of all these things. So there are some of these places from where we can get data. We can get data from the web, data which is not in a structured form. So most of the slides that I've been showing you, so data can be in 2 different formats. It is Shambhunath and Lahori. You have something to say, or just a mistake? You'll be raising your hand. Okay. Right. So one is structured data, which is there in a tabular form, and we can just transfer it to Excel sheets and do some of these analysis that I'm just going to talk about. If it is not in the structured format, we have to do a bit of coding to get access to these information. So that is again, another part of data journalism, but we don't want to make it sound very complex right at the beginning. At the beginning, we have everything there in that tabular format, in tables and rows and columns, and we just need to transfer it to Excel sheets. And I did a video on how to transfer that into Excel sheets and how to analyze that. I'll share that link, because those of you who are already into Excel, you will find that extremely easy. And I do not have the time to demonstrate it right here. But if in case you require that, maybe we'll fit it in some of our future sessions as we go along. So these are some of the ways in which we can directly get into the thing. Now, there are a number of stories which we can do, and I'm just providing you a very, very small list of this kind of stories we can do. First of all, this data can provide us with a full picture. So for example, if I have data about OTT consumption, so how many people are on YouTube, and what is the total percentage who has access to OTT, and so on and so forth. So that is the full picture. We have this percentage and proportion, so 1/3 and those kind of things. Internal comparison is about comparing. For example, it can be a lot of things, but we might be comparing West Bengal with Bihar, for example, or Birbhum with Bardhaman, for example, and those kind of things. External comparisons can be with other countries or with other states as time. One important data story that we always talk about is change with time. How have things changed? So I'm sure if anyone has any questions, please ask me. Now we are talking about what do we look in that data. We have accessed it. What are the things that we look for in the analysis? Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
Right. So this is just
Yes.
wow. So this is just some of the information that we can look for in structured data. If it is not structured, we'll have to make it structured. And one of them is change with time. So how has it changed over the years, over the trend, or whether it has increased or decreased, or whether there has been a substantial increase or decrease. At times we might have these league tables where we have 4 or 5 states and we compare on some of those dimensions. We analyze by categories. We also look for associations. I don't want to get into too much of statistics, but we want to look for correlations also, that whether this has increased and whether that has gone with that. So we are looking for associations, because associations make wonderful stories. We know that if we can associate certain events with other events, and we can even kind of suggest causal links if they exist, they can be wonderful stories. So we are looking for those kind of things, that which is the highest, which is the lowest, which are the states above the national average, which are the states below the national average. So we have questions always about the top 5 and the bottom 5, and whether my state or my district is above or below the average for a state or for the nation. So we have all sorts of questions available which can be answered using some very simple Excel techniques, using the information that we have. And we use that information as a source to talk to people, to talk to real people, to talk to officials, to go and find out, what are the causes that could have, led to all these things. And this is very important to create that impact, because it provides that very important verifiable evidence that anyone can verify for themselves. And that is important, and that is why it has to be weaved inside the story. Otherwise, numbers can be extremely boring. If it is that, at times data itself is a story. If there is a census data, or if there is some other data which has come out for the first time, then of course the data itself is a story, that 78% of Indians are now above the poverty line or something like that. But they are not always, that is not always the case where the data itself is the story. Most of the times data is an additional evidence inside the story, and it should come in effortlessly. It shouldn't, and there are ways of reporting numbers so that they don't look like very, very boring numbers, and people are put off by that. So if we put in too much of numbers and too much of percentages and all that, it is a strong put up, and people might not want to read those stories. That is why this is important to kind of, and in fact, the visit that we have on one of our on the validity day, and that's where we will kind of ask people to demonstrate stories and all, and that's where we have questions of using National Family Health Survey data. For example, we go there and we see the education level, and then we talk to people, and then we try and relate it to the larger question, because unless I have a nut graph which gives me a larger picture, that individual story does not make a lot of sense. For example, in the Jack and Jill story that we were discussing yesterday, unless we provide a total picture of how many people were being affected by falling down, and how many have to go because water is scarce, and because the hilly tracks are bad or whatever, so we need that additional information to make a rounded story. Otherwise, that single story, if it is just episodic, it does not make a lot of sense. So we have to find out whether it is a part of a larger trend, or related to national or state or district level, or even international trends. And that's where data becomes a lot more important. So accessing information, analyzing information, and there are a whole lot of ways of analyzing information. And this is again from Paul Bradshaw, what are the different kinds of stories that we can talk about. Holding up a mirror, top of the pop and the flops, as I just suggested, the best 5 or and the trend, as I said, a claim that you are debunking, and so on and so forth. So that's a very, very important way of. These are all victims and winners and losers, and so different kinds of analysis or different kinds of stories that we can make the data tell us. So one data story can tell us a lot of. So we'll try and put up some of those NFHS stories. If you just kind of search NFHS, the Hindu, the Indian Express, the Telegraph, the Times of India, they've all done a bunch of stories based on just that NFHS 5 data that we've just shared with you. And in fact, the link that I have provided, it provides you in a structured format as well. So I'll share that link with you in a moment's time. So this analysis is again very, very important. So just in 2 or 3 minutes, I'll try and wind up because so we can the final thing is about trying to present that particular data. And one particular site that I find very important for, and you can use that because it's, a lot of these websites, I mean, I'm sure many of you are already using Canva, and you know how easy it is compared to Photoshop, for example. There is this site known as Data Wrapper, and that's a wonderful site to create interactive data visualizations, all for free. If you, I mean, there are a lot of interactive visualizations that we can create about out of that. Apart from using those data information inside our stories, we can also use the data to, in its visual form, and that of course especially when we're using it for the digital media or whatever, it would make a lot more sense. For example, let me just show you if I have some of those data visualizations. Let me just 1 second. I just need to stop this and like so see, this is like can you see this drop down menu that you come across?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So I used this data I created this data visualization using the 2011 census figure and 2022 our UIDAI extrapolated figures, because we have not had a census since 2011. So this gives me an idea about where the population growth has been highest. So just by looking at the static data, I can look at the places which are more blue and say that okay, this is the area, Bihar and UP and all that, where the population growth has been highest. So not just that, I just need to hover onto this and I can find out what the population was in 2011, what is it in 2020, and how much is it as a population of as a percentage of India's population. So UP's population is 17.35% of Indian population in 2020, for example. So this data visualization has been created. I can share the link with you on your chat box again. This has been created using Data Wrapper, as you can see there, created using Data Wrapper. So created with Data Wrapper down here, if you can see that. So we can create these visualizations in a digital format and make it a lot more interesting. So I'm just sharing this with you. So the third part of data journalism is presentation. So we start off with accessing data. The second part is analyzing data. The third part is presenting it. So we can weave it down on our stories as additional evidence. We can create static visualizations there. We can also create interactive visualizations like that, because there are so many. There's another thing which is kind of integrated with Canva. It is known as Flourish. So if those of you who are using Canva, you can use Flourish there, which is there in Canva as well. So there are lots of these data visualization tools where we just need to, so it's very, it can be done in a matter of few minutes. You just need that data, you just need to import it into the, if required, in many cases, I do this data wrapper exercise. I did that with students in Makhanlal Chaturvedi University, for example, where we had a 5-day data journalism workshop, and in one of those days, they have to actually create these visualizations. And students, as we know, are much better than us when it comes to using technology. So data is an additional source of information. It can be used as an additional tool of information. It is humongous amount of data it is available there. We just should know what are the credible data that we can use and make our stories not only interesting but more believable, more credible, and it gives us ideas that we did not know. It gives us ideas for stories that we probably wouldn't know existed. So these are just some of the dimensions of data journalism. I have put only 3 parts of it: how to access it, how to analyze it, and how to present it. I gave you a link of data sets. I will also try and provide you with how we can use it on Excel. Just let me just try and get it. Try and get the link for you. So that's about the pivot tables I'm trying to find out. Just a second. Yeah, so in fact, I had to create this video on pivot tables after this journalist workshop at Calcutta Press Club, because their journalists actually wanted to know how to use it to get stories easily. So I have shared that link with you of how to use NSHS data to get stories, for example, using pivot tables. So that's an 11-minute video. If you want to see, those of you who work with Excel, you can just please let me know whether that works, this particular link. It works, right?
Yes, sir, it's working.
Yes, it is working. Yeah.
Okay. So I was given this platform at 8:16 and I ended 9:06. So I give 10 minutes back to the organizers. Thank you so much.
So we are not letting you go so fast. I'm sure there are questions lined up for you. Indeed, Lahori, I think there's some technical problem. She's been raising her hand several number of times. So Lahori, if we can quickly hear from you.
Lahori's hands would have been, paining by now. She's been raising it for half an hour. Tanmay, please go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sir, I have a question. It may not be directly related to your topic. Yes, I'm recently working on a paper related to the income of different media houses. So could you
What is that?
tell me from where I can get the data?
What's that question?
I just want to know from where I can get the data about the income of media houses in India. That means how much revenue.
That's a wonderful book by Vanita Kandekar. She has all the information about how to get those, and she has the latest one has the information about all the houses and all. Of course, there are statutory requirements because many of those companies are listed, and you can get it from their annual reports that they are supposed to file. So it won't be at one particular place. The RNI data is just about the figures and all that. So that has to go through a number of various things. Other places, there are extrapolations, there are indicators and all. So there are ways in which you can do that. But I would refer you to Vanita Kohli's wonderful book on Indian media business.
Actually,
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, please, Tanmay, go ahead.
Actually, I need how much revenue they will generate from the social media. Actually, there are different monetization policies of different social media.
Social media is again, often, it's a very, very small portion of many news houses because they are not. Very recently, many of them have gone behind the paywall of I think you're talking about the digital media, for example. Otherwise, on the social media, on YouTube and all, I'm not sure how much they earn and whether it is out in the open or not. But their digital media revenue is separate. So that's there in many of those things. So there is one by this FICCI report that comes out pretty regularly, but it's again for the entire industry. It's not for individual houses. And for that, you'll have to have those statutory ways of going about it. But yes, that's research. That's what research is all about. If all the data were available at one place, then it would be much easier. But I'm sure that after you complete your work, you'll put it out all in the public domain so that the future researchers would make more use of it. But again, as I said, it will have to go through all these levels. Much of it is not structured data available at one single place. But I'll see how I can help you further. I'll keep that in mind. Right?
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We move down to Dr. Orko Mukhopadhyay.
Yes, Mr. Pandey, just I want to know one thing. Sometimes the data journalism making the confusion, like that, especially in NCRB report, National Crime Bureau report. So they give, when they give some data and the facts, and simultaneously in state, if they have their own facts and figures, so it cannot match. But what is the parameters to check, and what is the thing is that the facts should be checked in which way?
So first of all, as a good reporter, you and I would file the first report suggesting that the state and the national reports don't match, right? So that is one report, for example. So data journalism has provided us with the correct information right away that the NCRB data and the state data is not matching. And then, we'll have to probably dig deeper where it is not matching, because if there are two government organizations both suggesting the same thing, then probably, there are lots of things at stake. But again, as I said, that once you dig in deeper, you find out certain things. And let me just explain you how. For example, when the national crimes, NCRB, when they record data, they only record the highest possible crime. So just to give you an example, if the Nirbhaya case were regarded as a crime, you know what it would be recorded as? It would be recorded as just murder. They would not record the second and the third and the fourth levels and so on and so forth. So there are these problems with, there are these things about data, and we as data journalists will get to know about that only when we are deep into it. And that's where we realize that, data can mean very many different things. And that's where, this investigation is important. So for us, the source has changed, but we can use this in very many different forms. So if there is, two different data from two different organizations, of course, that's a wonderful story. That there is, and it can be good. So here the data itself is the story. That two government organizations, putting it differently, and then trying to find out from them what do they do and all that, and how they record it and so on and so forth. And at times, even UN data can be, slightly confusing. Some people might consider children as below 15, some might consider below 18. So you just have to have a look at it into that. I have a kind of a presentation on data biography, and I will share that with you. I just want to show you that, okay? Just to show you that I had that ready and I could not show it to you. So I'll probably see if I can share that a moment's time just to show you. Yes. So we ask all these questions of data, that who collected it and who owns it, and how was the data collected, what was the sample size, and who was included in the sample, how was the data collected, and when was it last updated, and why was it collected, and is it accurate, does it reflect the real world objects? If we have data which does not reflect real world objects, then probably it's not good data, right? So we do ask all these questions. Do we have enough data? Is necessary data all present? Did you get the data for the relevant time period? What is the most recent data? If newer data is not available, why is it not available? So we have to ask these questions, but that is at the second stage, right? Am I clear? Yes? No? Yeah. So we have to ask these questions, and that's how we we get to know whether which one is whether it is of a particular period, what is the sampling process, and whether they did this or not, because there are lots and lots of examples we know about. So for example, just let me very quickly give you a very interesting anecdote about what is the survivor bias before we end, because it's already 13 minutes past 9, and yeah, it means that I have not used up my entire hour, so I can use it for. So, for example, that in World War I, am I audible? And are you all available for a 1 minute quick story about survivor bias? Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Absolutely,
Yes,
sir.
sir. Definitely.
Okay, wonderful. So in World War I, when all these planes were returning to their bases, many of those planes had bullet marks at some of those parts of the plane. So maybe on the body of the plane, a lot of bullet marks. There are maybe on some other parts of the planes, there were all those huge bullet marks and holes, and all those planes had returned to their bases. So some of those generals saw that, okay, the plane is weak in this place, and that is why these holes are there. So let's refurbish or let's strengthen these areas and everything will be okay. But then some engineer, I don't want to get into details, he came up with this idea that, okay, the planes which have returned were hit on these places, that is why these holes were there. What about the planes that did not return? So probably they were hit on the wings and they fell down. So it's not weak where we assume it is weak. It is weak where we don't even see because those planes could not return. These are strong here. That is why even with those bullet marks, they could return. Other places, it might have been hit on the wing and they just collapsed there. It's weaker at other places, and it was found out to be true. So this brings in, a question of survivor bias in psychology, for example. If I take an online poll of students and if we ask them that, how good is the online classes, most of them will say good because they have crossed that survivor bias. What about people who've been left behind? So when we have that kind of a sampling bias, it can give an untrue results. Am I clear? I mean, does it make sense? Survivor bias, yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Wonderful. So there are many questions which go into that. And the idea is to let's start it first, and then we get into all the details, because the questions that a humanities professor was asking there was from a very different perspective, because that is from how to define story and how to make sense of story and all that. We are saying that we will use those tools to make our stories more interesting, because we know that stories work better. So we will be doing the storytelling, but here we will be using this evidence. So we are not just throwing out narrative journalism just like that. We are just providing additional evidence for that.
So can we take just another question as the last question for the day?
I am available throughout. No problem.
Anurag
Yeah.
Dwivedi, if I can request you to go ahead.
Thank you, ma'am. First of all, sir, I want to tell you that it's always wonderful to listen to you, and thank you so much for informative session. My question is to you that being a researcher, I am struggling with the data collection. And my particular question is that, sir, is there any archival management data source for media content or media visual content? So, like many times I struggle with the, I face problem to find out visual contents.
Unfortunately, that repository does not exist. We'll have to create it all by ourselves. But of course, there are, if you know somebody who's into coding, web scraping helps. And, I've been, trying to get a hang of Python and all that, how to get into web scraping and how to get all those things. So we can use web scraping to get, data from YouTube, for example, or from Twitter, for example, and, from all those digital resources. But that would require some coding help, and that's how we can create those repositories. So that is one way of going about it. Secondly, many of these sites, for example, Facebook does not allow web scraping anymore, and there are other sites which do not allow those scrapers. But again, that's slightly maybe the next level of collecting data, but that exists, and I'm sure that we as researchers will have to update ourselves with all those things. So been doing some R and Python and all that to get because this is again something that needs to be worked upon. But yeah, we'll have to create those repositories for future researchers and so on and so forth. But right now the idea is to just use those links and use maybe some software to draw in some themes or content analyze or to make sense of it. But yeah, that is a problem, and we will have technical and other kind of solutions soon. And hopefully we are, because I started off with R at certain places, and we found out that and in fact I was very it was a pleasant thing to know that many of you are well into Excel and Google Sheet and all that, and pivot tables. So that is a good start. The next thing would be maybe to get into a bit of computer coding and all that, because computational social sciences, that's a huge thing these days, CSS as they call that. So some of us will have to, collaborate or have, people from there, because maybe the technical people know how to get in data, but they will not be able to understand, what it means or what the associations are all. So we'll have to form these teams with these technical people and, get in the data, through web scrapers and all that. And there are a lot of, web scraping applications are there. Yeah, AI tools are there. Yes, Octoparse, for example, is a very important tool. So if you can, just Octoparse, P-A-R-S-E. You can, yes, Shudipto sir. Yes, it, sampling technique, of course, it is. So who's left out? So if you're taking just a online poll, so that would exclude a lot of other people. If you just take in maybe a Twitter poll, you will be excluding a lot of people. So sampling is very, very important.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anurag. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We come down to the end of this second session for day 2. Thank you, Shankar Pandey, sir. I mean, you've been such an inspiration for all of us. I know we've been keeping our participants on, we are running behind, say, by 20 minutes. But then again, this 20 minutes, was very, I believe it was a very enriching session. Specifically as academicians, we are involved into research activity, and your session on data journalism and storytelling will definitely help each one of us in doing much justice to the research that we do.